it's just wild because we were talking about this in, say, June of 2020 and July, and, you know, Plandemic 2 is based on this whole thing. And I mean, you know, I was getting thrown off of YouTube for questioning masks or social distancing, let alone you don't want to use the V word. If you use the V word, you're thrown off of YouTube. And if you start talking about the virus coming from a lab in Wuhan, they're going to stick you in a padded room. This was mid-2020.
No, sure.
And then it's just so kind of fun to watch everything come full circle to where the Wall Street Journal a couple months ago published this front page article that we finally have this conclusive evidence that we think we found that it came from a lab in Wuhan. And it's just again, that's an interesting case study in humanity.
Yeah,
watching that happen.
But if we come back to early 2020, you know, we all act according to information we receive, and like many people, we didn't know what we were dealing with. Right? I think most people were in that situation. I remember seeing all these images from China and Italy of people dying, and you think, bloody hell, this is what's coming. And like everybody else, I had a level of fear to the extent where, well, also I knew that there was older, you know, very early on when I spoke on Sky News, I said the average age of death from Italy, certainly from COVID early on, is 81, and they have 2.7 comorbidities. So in some ways it was reassuring that this seemed to be something that was more of an issue amongst the elderly. But again, I was worried about my dad getting it, et cetera, et cetera. So I had a level of fear, but not obviously, you know, and I think there's probably a graded fear according to your age. A lot of older people completely, and my dad was, you know, and he's a tough guy, but even I could see he was extremely worried about what could happen. Yeah. So, and I think that's important because in a state of fear, there are two things that happen. One is, as a human, as an individual, it impedes your ability to engage in critical thinking, but also it makes you more vulnerable to being controlled and more compliant to government who are pushing this message, right, of fear. Yeah. And of course, then it made people in general, a lot of people, most people, more compliant with the whole lockdown strategy. Yeah. Which I think was again driven by fear and maybe to a certain extent misinformation. I think those policymakers themselves were also scared. I know some of these ministers were, right? Everybody was worried. Yeah. I suspect the Chinese government was scared as well. Yeah. Right? I think that's what happened. They didn't know what they were dealing with, and everybody got scared. And I think as you know better than I, Brian, as well, that, you know, the initial World Health Organization pandemic response was not to do lockdowns because they know that they can't contain respiratory viruses like this from lockdowns. But I think they changed their stance because China had somehow convinced the world that they had contained COVID in Wuhan. And I think that's probably what, you know, so it's literally that simple. Yeah. Anyway, so then we moved forward. I was there banging the drum about, we're all going to get this. I even said on Sky News, at some point we're all going to get this. Right. You know, March 2020, we're all going to get COVID, right? So the best thing we can do in the meantime is let's optimize our resilience to infection by, you know, looking at lifestyle. That's the best thing I could offer. And of course that evolved to even talking about vitamin D, et cetera. And then we get towards, well, it's very interesting. So I started publishing on this and getting a lot of publicity on this, even internationally. There were American, you know, bloggers and podcasters contact me saying, oh my God, how did you get this into the mainstream news in England? We're not getting this into the mainstream discussion in the US. So I was getting interviewed by people like Mark Hyman and Paul Saladino, you know, who's like he's the carnivore diet guy, one of the carnivore diet guys in the US. Lots of people interviewed me over there. So this discussion was ongoing. And then, and I remember then being asked by my publisher, I was already in the middle of writing A Statin-Free Life, and she said, can you stop doing this? You're getting so much, you know, you're doing a lot of great work on this issue between COVID, immunity and metabolic health. Can you write a book, right? And in 6 weeks, right? And I was like, yeah, okay, let's do it. So I wrote this book, but the reason I'm mentioning it is when I started, you know, it got great reviews, and initially I think a European Scientist editor had also done a review about this book, etc. But in the middle of 2020, I think the title was something like your best vaccine against coronavirus is improving your metabolic health through lifestyle. or something like best defense, but there was vaccine initially in there. And then suddenly I'm getting trolled on Twitter by NHS doctors saying that I'm an anti-vaxxer, right? Because he'd written this article. So I thought, this is a bit odd. No vaccine at this point, by the way. Of course, we knew that they'd started to develop a vaccine. Right. So I was a little bit like, oh, this is strange. We get to the end of 2020, of course, and the vaccine starts getting rolled out. And I was at that stage, I'd also written about COVID and knowing that people's risks if you were young were quite low. And I was even telling people, certainly people who were younger, like, no, you don't need to have this vaccine very early on. But I had taken it as a doctor thinking it was going to protect my patients, right? Because, I have trusted traditional vaccines to protect you from infection, before we talk about side effects. So I made the presumption that it was going to prevent you getting the infection and therefore I would not pass it on. Clearly, obviously, we know that changed very, very quickly. Within, I think, I went on Good Morning Britain because I'd convinced a friend of mine who's a film director, Gurinder Chadha, to take the vaccine and to tackle vaccine hesitancy. But I said, listen, there are rational concerns. I think the producer of Good Morning Britain was probably a bit shocked that I said this, because I wasn't just coming on like the regular doctor saying, listen, it's safe and effective, take it, don't worry. I said, the rational concerns here, look at what Big Pharma and the fraud they've committed for years. But I said, despite that, traditional vaccines are amongst some of the safest. I think also, I wasn't seeing, Brian, from other people at the time that I look up to in this space who have been taking on Big Pharma and doing a lot of work over the years. Peter Gersher, co-founder of the Cochrane Collaboration, even Ioannidis. I wasn't seeing any of those people coming out saying, we've got concerns here. The only person I think that wrote about it, and I think has been proven correct, is Peter Doshi, associate editor of the BMJ. He was early on saying, hold on, we need the raw data. Let's not rush into this, right? He was writing stuff. I hadn't paid that much attention to his work till later on. But I wasn't getting the obvious people coming out saying that they were concerned about it. So I kind of went along with it. And also I think the other thing was, in terms of the Pfizer vaccine, it was originally developed by a Turkish couple. I don't know if you remember that. It wasn't developed by Pfizer.
Okay.
It was developed by this small company and this Turkish couple. And I thought these people are genuinely like the real deal. They are people that they're working really hard. All of the world's eyes are on developing a vaccine very quickly. We look back and we say, okay, other vaccines take 5 to 10 years, et cetera, and that has merit. But, this was an unprecedented circumstance where you've got the whole world focusing on trying to produce a vaccine. So all those things played on my mind a bit. And again, I never thought I thought maybe efficacy won't be that great. I never thought it would cause harm. I couldn't conceive it was possible, Brian, to cause harm.
That they would release it if it did? That so many people with so many eyeballs on it, they would never ever release something that would cause harm?
No, it wasn't that. It was because I was indoctrinated into traditional vaccines not causing harm.
Right.
I've had so many vaccines in my life. I've even got a big scar on my arm from the smallpox vaccine. I was born in India.
Right. Okay.
Right. Both my parents were GPs. Their life revolved around often giving vaccines to kids. I mean, that was part of the culture that I was in. And I put vaccines in a special category.
Right.
So I couldn't conceive, I wasn't even aware, I'd never come across anybody that come to me and say they were vaccine injured.
Right.
Not a single person, right? A lot of what drove my campaigning was information I got from my patients, which didn't fit with what was coming in the published trials around harms of statins, for example.
Okay.
I'm very in tune with my patients, but I'm an adult cardiologist, right? So, I'd never seen anything like that. I never, and so I didn't think that was possible. Actually, didn't think it was possible.
So Jim Rickards has just recorded a video that's not available to anyone in the public, and he's going to be talking about how this upcoming recession is going to be fast, it's going to be bloody, it's going to be nasty. But at the same time, he's going to show you how you can position yourself to profit from all of this chaos. Now, we've made this video only available to our viewers. Go to londonreal.tv/Jim. Watch that immediately. I can't say enough good things about Jim Rickards. He understands the global economic system better than any guest I've ever had on London Real. His predictions are almost uncannily true, and you can learn how to profit from his vision, from his expertise, and his understanding of economics. So go to londonreal.tv/Jim or click the link below. It's an excellent, excellent look on what's going to happen in the future and how you can position yourself to profit from that. Jim is one of the best in the business, one of my favorite guests on London Real, and he's very, very good at predicting the future and showing us all to profit from it. So click the link, and I hope you enjoy. I'm looking for partners, collaborators, colleagues who want to join forces with me around the globe and create real value, generational wealth, and financial freedom for everyone else around the world. Get involved in the cryptocurrency markets, get involved in the NFT markets. This is your moment. Life all comes down to a few moments. Don't let this pass. Now it's not too late. Next year's going to be too late. Ultimately, this is about freedom. That's the way I see it. This is about giving power back to the people and enabling billions of people worldwide to use the financial markets to improve their lives and those of their friends and their families and their communities. Honestly, I think it's a violation of human rights not to allow people basic access to financial services. Because right now people are being kept in the dark, they're being robbed of education, and it's a travesty. And so I'm looking for people that want to join me and be a part of this solution. And that all happens inside the DeFi Academy. The gains my students are making are absolutely amazing. Double, triple digit gains in the first month alone. That's amazing. This will change your life. Now is the time to get involved. I'm gonna tell you exactly how my students in my academy made money in the last 30 days. I'm talking about real trading results. And let me just whet your appetite a little bit. Let me hit you with some numbers. I'm talking Brendan from New Zealand is up 68.77% on the month. Steve from Europe up 83%. Albert in Singapore up 169.9% on one single trade. I got Susan up 153% on her call options alone, also rocking 139% returns and 442% returns as well on individual trades. These are people that are changing their financial future in the last 30 days, but it's based on trading discipline. I've graduated over 500 students from inside my academy from over 54 countries around the world. It's amazing. When it comes to crypto, DeFi, and blockchain, we love this space. We truly believe it's the future. This is down to our core. It's authentic to what we're doing, and everybody can tell through the camera because you can't make this stuff up. If you're watching me now, wherever you are, I implore you, take 60 seconds right now and join my academy. Apply today. Now you've got a chance. Life all comes down to a few moments. What are you gonna do? What's the choice that you're going to make?